Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to episode 259 of the Jays from the Couch radio podcast, brought to you by, of course, jaysfromthecouch.com. We're glad you're tuning in for another week of Blue Jays talk, whether it's watching our live stream on YouTube, Facebook, or on Twitter. We really appreciate that. Watch every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, even though the visual is indicating something completely different. We will have to fire the producer for putting that up there. Anyway, Mondays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, we stream live where you can leave your comments and questions directly onto the show. It's a lot of fun, and we really appreciate all the views and the live participation as well. And if you miss this recording, it's on our YouTube channel. Just go on YouTube, look for Jays from the Couch, but also the audio podcast, the old school method. Anywhere you find a podcast, you'll find Jays from the Couch. Give us a subscribe and a rate and review and all that stuff, and we'd greatly appreciate it. And don't forget, we have more quality programming for you on Tuesday evenings with the On Feck Circle, hosted by the feckless wonder Steve Feck. Must-watch TV. You never know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates, Forrest Gump situation every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Tune in live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. As well, on Thursday evenings, Sunny Side of the Dome, hosted by Karen Sutar, the only person who can blend positivity and logic the way she does. It is excellent programming every Tuesday and Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Hello. Welcome. I'm your host, Shaun Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at Doyle JFtC. Welcome to another week of Blue Jays talk. This week, the Blue Jays are firing on some cylinders, most of their cylinders, let's say. Climbing in the standings, 7-3 over the last week. And yet, if you look at certain places out there, it doesn't look as good as it should. And we'll dive into that, whether or not this Blue Jays team is actually an underdog. They're not playing like it now, but overall they may just be considered that. And to help me dive into this, I've got host of Sunny Side of the Dome Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Karen Sutar. Good evening.
Good evening, Shaun.
How's it going?
Oh, great. How are you?
Just peachy. And
peachy after sweeping Atlanta twice.
2 times. That's right. 6 of their wins have come at the hands of Alex Anthopoulos' team. The GM who knows what he's doing, according to our next co-host, Steve Feck. Good evening, sir.
Hey, did I hear the Blue Jays fired somebody? Is that what you said? You got me all excited there. Oh, okay. But I have another fortune cookie. You guys want it now? Or you want me to wait till later in the show?
Well, it's becoming a weekly feature, so I think we give it its airtime right now. Go ahead.
Okay. And our fortune says, plan for the best, prepare for the worst.
Well,
Ross Atkins.
Yeah. I mean, one could argue that the Toronto Blue Jays have done that. They have loaded up on depth, and the worst is happening, and they're relying on said depth. But maybe we'll get into all of that. Steve, I still think you're putting those little pieces of paper inside an empty cookie every week.
It's random. It's just random stuff. Ross Atkins, we're watching you.
All right. And I'm sure he's watching us too.
Oh, I'm sure.
Hi, Ross. Yeah. Love the beard. Anyway, so this week, the Toronto Blue Jays went 7-3 over the last 10 games, 5-1, I believe, over the last week, looking like a baseball team. Not too bad, sweeping Atlanta, of course, and then 2 or 3 against the Phillies and Bryce Harper and all of that. But maybe before we get into the but, Karen, your thoughts about the last week in Blue Jays baseball? What were you? Yeah, let me just leave it at that. What were your thoughts about how they performed this past week?
Yeah, I mean, you got to like it. 5-1, a sweep, and then another series victory at home away from home in Philly. I mean, darn it, if they would have blown that lead yesterday, but thank goodness they didn't. It's just kind of the offense staying ahead of things and all that. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy. I'm impressed. I mean, things as a team seem to be going in the right direction. They were commenting, well, they had a bit of an unfortunate game yesterday with the defense. Maybe the Phillies were rubbing off on them, but prior to that, for the previous 2 weeks, I said the Jays as a team had only made 3 errors, and I look at guys like Bichette and even Biggio at third, who I'm not completely sold on, and they look better. And I would bet real money that the two of them have been putting in extra work to improve their defense, because they see what's been working and what hasn't been working, and they want to win. They want to be good contributors.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I mean, I'm confident as well that they're putting in the work. I don't know if I would bet real money, maybe some Monopoly money or something like that. That's about all my bank account can take. But Steve, let's get your thoughts on the last week in Blue Jays baseball.
Well, you can't help but be impressed. It seems whatever needs to get done seems to get done. If they need to come back late, that happened repeatedly over the last week. If they need to go out and start pounding like they did yesterday in short runs, they do that. The bullpen just keeps on churning. You know, they lead. You know, I think they're back in the lead now in innings pitched. They went to 29th. I think they're 30th, the 30th as far as too many innings pitched, if you will. You have to be happy. And I do point out that with the defense, Rowdy Tellez, I don't think has been in the field this week, has he? So that would be a huge part of the improvement.
Sorry to cut in. He's played first at least once.
Shows you what an impression he made. But again, I mean, that's just it's you have to be happy considering everything that has gone wrong. And I don't mean that in a negative connotation as execution. Injuries, various things that have happened. You've got to be happy.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to kind of dive into, I guess, where we are now. If you're a Blue Jays fan, you got to be thinking playoffs, here we come, right? I mean, you kind of thought that just as the season was getting started, but you know, they've taken a while to kind of get their mojo and get things rolling, so to speak. But they seem to have caught fire a little bit. And before we even go any further, let's just acknowledge that there will be losing streaks. Okay, they're going to lose some games in July. They're going to lose some games in August, and so you know when we talk about how excited we are right now, and we're talking about playoffs and all of that, we understand that this team is not going to go undefeated between now and the end of September, right? Like we get this, so there are going to be losing streaks. Okay, now that's because I don't want, you know what's going to happen, right? Somebody's going to be watching this. They may even comment live right now on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. Nice little plug there. Anyway, they may tell me, you know, oh, you guys you're being homers and blah, blah. We get it. We're not idiots. We understand that things aren't, you know, perfect. This is not.
Well, I'm an idiot.
Well, I mean,
I appreciate you covering for me, but yeah, well, I appreciate that.
But we would never pretend this is a World Series team, not yet. So that being said, though, this is a playoff team, and they're starting to play like one. So with that in mind, I have a piece coming out tomorrow at Jays from the Couch about this Blue Jays team being an underdog. And Karen and I were talking before we went live here. And there seems to be a bunch of pieces and articles coming out kind of around this topic, so to speak. You've got Major League Baseball, everybody's got their power rankings, right? Like everybody's got their power rankings. Fangraphs, which we'll get into, Major League Baseball's got theirs, and Karen's going to talk about that in a second here. And we've got playoff odds, which, are math based, right? This isn't some guy in some alleyway saying, hey, put some money down here. Karen's got real money. Let's go talk to her. It's not that. But there are, it's kind of the chatter of the day. So I want to talk about it because at this point, I'm not convinced that the Blue Jays are getting their due. They're not getting the, for lack of a better word, respect that I think they should be getting as a playoff team. Because right now they're a playoff team, right? They're in the second wild card spot. They're only a game and a half out of first place in the division. This is a playoff team. So I don't think that will get recognized. The other thing I want to touch on before I know I'm taking up like all the airtime, but you know what? I'm the host. So it's there you go. Anyway, now see, I lost my train of thought here. It'll come back to me. I'm sure it will. Anyway, so playoff team, but they're not getting, this is what it was. Toronto, the Blue Jays in particular, are used to getting a certain lack of attention from mainstream Major League Baseball media, playing in Canada, playing in a quote-unquote different country. And depending on how you look at it, the country is more and more different all the time. But there's always that lack of, players don't want to come to Toronto, all of that, right? So there's always a bit of a chip on the shoulder of Blue Jays and their fans. But this year, when you add in that they've been playing at a Dunedin and they're moving to Buffalo, it kind of, they're kind of that transient team. They're there, but we don't really talk about them. You know what I mean? Even though they'll talk about other teams that are just as terrible. But I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to hand it over to you, Karen. You've got, let's talk about the power rankings situation here. The Blue Jays on Major League Baseball's power rankings.
Right. Yeah. So I'm signed up as anybody can be for daily emails from MLB. Yeah, just to let any baseball fan know what's going on in the world of baseball and so forth. And every Monday during the season, anyway, they come out with the power rankings. So the Blue Jays, as we said, just had a week where they had 5 wins and only a single loss. And somehow out of that, they dropped. They were 9th in the power rankings last week. And somehow they dropped to 10th. So I don't know what they had to do to at least maintain their spots. They had to go 6-0, I guess, and win every game 20-0. Like, hello, Major League Baseball, we're here and we're playing well and pay attention.
And that's just it, right? There's that. What do you have to do to get that attention? And Steve, it's a good thing you're here. As always, of course, it's always good that you're here. But for this conversation in particular, given that you are our lone American correspondent, if you will, I wonder if you might be able to shed some light on why this phenomenon exists, where Toronto just doesn't seem to get the recognition, because there are other teams like, the Reds, for example, who will get recognition now and then. Even the friggin' Orioles of Baltimore will get recognition at some point. Maybe it more for being the worst. But Steve, I wonder if you might be able to shed some light on that.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the majority of attention are in the major television and media markets: New York, Boston, Philadelphia, the I-95 corridor down into Atlanta. You've got 2 franchises in Chicago. You've got Southern California, and you have Northern California. To bring viewers and readers in, that's what you're going to try to hump. You're going to say, look at this. Look how great it is. The Giants, the surprising story of Major League Baseball. The team really stinks when you look at it, but somehow they keep winning. So that's awesome. That's going to be the way they skew. It's not so much that Toronto plays in another country, because for 2 years they haven't. They've been playing, in the U.S. I've been trying to make Toronto America's team, at least for 2021, because really, I mean, they're vagabonds for 2 years. Let's, if they're playing in the States, let's get behind them. But really, I don't think it's an anti-Toronto bias. And it would be no different than when you go on to Hockey Night in Canada. What are you watching on Saturday night, which I do religiously? News about Canadian hockey teams. And it has nothing to do with Canadian content. Viewers, in the majority of viewers in Canada want to know about the teams that they're barracking for, that they're supporting. They don't really care about the Nashville Predators or the Florida Panthers. I mean, if they're playing Toronto or they're playing Montreal or they're playing Vancouver or Winnipeg, okay, fine. But I really don't think it's so much they're from another country. It's just that the focus is to try to drive viewers and drive media dollars. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, Toronto really has been irrelevant for a long time. I know 15 and 16, they had some good playoff runs, but overall, you've got to go back to the early 90s since the Blue Jays were really relevant. So why would American audiences even glance there? Because they're looking at the AL East, and it's Boston, it's the Yankees. Tampa Bay's a feel-good story. Baltimore was good. I think they were good sometime in my lifetime. I forgot that too. But I mean, they had some good years. I think it's just a matter of people are getting familiar with the Toronto Blue Jays again.
Right.
And with the core of young players, I think that is going to change over the course of this season and going forward.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? I don't disagree. I mean, there were a lot of years that the Blue Jays were just tire spinning. The JP Ricciardi years come to mind where they were doing stuff. They were there, but they weren't really doing stuff. Anyway, I want to look at Fangraph's power rankings because they have something a little interesting here, and it was. I don't know how to describe it other than they have tiers. They've broken the Major League Baseball into tiers for their power rankings. And Karen may end up shedding a tier when we hear this. I can't take credit for that joke. Karen made it before we even went on air, and I had to. I done stole it. So, Karen's the funny one. So I guess I'll start from the bottom because it's kind of funny. They have tier 6, which is the hope deferred category, which is rather interesting to me. Even though Atlanta finds themselves in that category, and I don't know that will stay like that all year. I mean, they're in the same category as Detroit and Baltimore. You got to think that Atlanta is at least gonna move up a tier. But right now they're hurt, they're banged up, and they're down there with the Pirates and the Rockies. Anyway, sorry, I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny. Next tier is tier 5, the on the fence tier. You have Washington, the Cubs, Brewers, Rangers, and Mariners. That kind of makes sense, right? We're still at the point of the season where teams are kind of, and I know, in fact, you don't like to hear this saying, but it takes about 50, 60 games, before things start to move and teams really figure out what they have. That being said, we're still kind of at the beginning of the season. So, a lot could change there. I know the Nationals are probably better than where they are right now. Tier 4 is the hopefuls. You have the Mets, Cardinals, Cleveland, Cincinnati, the Marlins, and Phillies. If you're in the same category as the Marlins, you got to be asking yourself some questions, particularly if you're the New York Mets and brand new owner. But then, of course, Francisco Lindor has been not Francisco Lindor. In fact, I saw a tweet. I have to share this tweet. I saw it just before we went on air. Francisco Lindor has played, I think, every game, and he's put up 0.1 wins above replacement. George Springer has played in 4 games, and he's put up 0.1 wins above replacement. Just saying. Anyway, moving along quickly here, you have to go up to the second tier, or the next tier, tier 3. This is the solid contenders tier in the power rankings this week. And here we find Oakland, Tampa Bay, San Francisco, the New York Yankees, and your Toronto Blue Jays. Solid contenders. And I don't dispute that. They are solid contenders. So let's move up a little bit. Tier 2 is made up of on the cusp of greatness, first of all, is the category. That's even better than the first tier, by the way, the name of that category. But you find San Diego, Houston, and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Okay, sure. This is where things just lose all logic. And normally, I'm a huge fan of Fangraphs. I love their work, the math, the statistical information that you can find there is second to none. And in their tier 1, they have the Chicago White Sox. Okay. And the Boston Red Sox. So the Boston Red Sox and the Chicago White Sox top Fangraphs power rankings. Then you have to go down to 3 more teams, and then you get into the tier that the Blue Jays find themselves in. Overall, they have Toronto as the 7th spot, so still better than Major League Baseball's rankings. They have, I want to dive into this, just a 51.5% chance of making the playoffs. That's it. And then if you look at their chance of winning the division, it's like 13%. Chance of winning the World Series is like 3%. Okay, I suppose I could accept that. Except the New York friggin' Yankees all have their chance of making the playoffs is at 87 or something, 86%. Chance of winning the division is like 54%, and chance of winning the World Series is 16%. The only team with a higher chance, probability, or whatever you want to call it, of winning the World Series is the Dodgers, according to Fangraphs. So my question is, why? What you can say all you want about subjective power rankings, and it's people's opinions. These playoff odds, it's math based, it's science, it's fact. So my question is, and I see Karen, I'm going to start with you because I just saw your face. How is it possible that are we looking at a team that really has just above 50% chance of making the playoffs?
Of those 3 stats that you quoted there, I don't have a huge issue with the second and third one, but I myself, I'm pretty confident that they're going to at least make the playoffs. I've been saying all along that, like, I'm calling them a wild card team, and if they want to exceed my expectations and win the division, then so much the better. But I feel in my guts that they're at least going to get there. How far they're going to go, I mean, 3% to win the World Series, I think chances are against it this year because they're still building. They're still adding as a team. They're still improving internally, and they're still looking at what external adds they may need. But yeah, I mean, how much ahead of the Yankees do the Jays need to be before their odds are better? I mean, these are things that I'd really like to understand.
An excellent question.
I remember one year, and this is actually going back some time. This is going back maybe 20 years or so. And it was early September, and the Jays were ahead of the Yankees in the standings. And there was a newspaper that was publishing or something. Maybe it was even MLB.com, but somebody was focusing on the remaining games for contending teams, and they were including the Yankees and they weren't including the Jays, even though the Jays were ahead of them in the standings in September. And I don't know if they bothered to read it, but I actually sent them a little note. I said, hey, how can you say that the Yankees are a contending team and the Jays aren't when the Jays are ahead of them in the standings? Please do something. And at some point after I sent that message, they actually dropped the Yankees from that section. So
there you go. There you go. So, Steve, I know you're like waiting to get in on the anti-statistics and all of that stuff. But seriously, though, you're somebody who kind of rallies against the advanced metrics. And so, is this a playoff team? Is this a team that has a 50-ish% chance of making the playoffs?
I think the Blue Jays have played themselves in the 50% range. You know that fastball down the middle you always talk about at the end of every podcast? You just grooved it in here for me. You really did. And it's not so much the fan graph and the expected and the weighted and the pluses that we're talking about here. The playoff odds, they don't just make them up. They're in, that's how the gambling business makes money. They are basing it not just on on-field exploits. They're basing it on not expected stats that a computer is spitting out, but expected reactions within the market that are going to occur with certain teams. Brian Cashman and the Yankees is going to find a way, and he has the resources. He'll make the deals. Dave Dombrowski and the Phillies, I don't think they have it, but he knows how to make the deals down the stretch. Billy Beane and the A's. Go down the list, the teams that might have higher odds of making the playoffs or going to the World Series are all based on history and what teams' front offices can do as well. Now, in defense of the Red Sox, this is sort of like a series preview, if you will, here. The Red Sox lead Major League Baseball, not the American League. They lead Major League Baseball in runs scored, hits, doubles, slugging percentage, and OPS. They're second in team average, fifth in homers, sixth in on-base percentage. Those are real results that are actually happening. That's why they're in the top tier. Okay. The Blue Jays are having a great year too, but the White Sox, same thing. They're second, third, fourth in Major League Baseball in all these important categories. So I think that's where some of that jadedness comes from. But it's not analytics, which are stupid. Anything that's expected, weighted, or you have to put a plus next to is stupid. That's creating a statistic to make your point. Sort of like how I make things up to make my points. But I don't put a weighted expected plus. You expect me to say something stupid. It is weighted because I'm fat, and it's a plus factor that I'm an obnoxious American. So you put all those together and you expect what comes out of my mouth. But seriously, this is based on what's really happening on the field and the factors that there are front offices and team dynamics that will allow other teams like the Yankees, like the Rays, like the Brewers, who are way down, which shocked me, the Cardinals, they get it done every trade deadline, every season. So I think that's where the playoff odds come in.
I would argue that, and I agree with you on with regard to statistics. I failed intro to stats my first year of university. Math was numbers are not my thing. And I would agree, that maybe when it comes to betting odds and things like that, all those factors are taken in. But when it comes to things like Fangraphs, it's a mathematical calculation based on who's on the roster, right? And not whether or not Ross Atkins will go out and land a Max Scherzer or whatever have you.
Yeah, but they're not. Fangraphs is using that information based on these created stats that are supposed to tell you what to expect or what should happen based on all these formulas they came up with. They're not really addressing what is happening on the field. The only thing that really gets addressed is WAR. That's telling you what's really happening on the field. So I think that's where, you and I might differ on that. And certainly people, Jays from the couch are probably blowing their gasket for me rambling on like this. But I mean, it's the bottom line. It's what you do on the field. If you looked at the beginning of the year, no one said the Boston Red Sox would be leading the American League East this deep into May. And I was always saying, don't sleep on the Red Sox. It's affect your projections. Don't sleep on the Red Sox. But I didn't think they'd be the first place Boston Red Sox. But the numbers don't lie. I mean, they're putting up the numbers they need to put in. They're out hitting every team in Major League Baseball, including Blue Jays, and that's no small task.
That's right. Yeah. My yearly bet is in jeopardy. I was thinking about that today with the Red Sox in first place. I may have to start saving up my pennies. Karen, you wanted to chime in here?
Yeah, just a few things that sort of came to mind as you were talking, and Steve, smart guy that you are, you always make some very interesting points, and as usual, I don't always agree with all of them, but I mean, I can see where you're coming from and where the ranking system and the tier system is coming from, if they're looking at things like you said about the Brian Cashman factor and things like that. So fun fact, pop quiz. How many deadline trades did Alex Anthopoulos make in 2015? Exactly. And how many deadline trades did Atkins and Shapiro make last year?
7.
5.
Okay. Why are you waiting till the deadline when you have a chance to establish yourself now? As I beat the same dead horse over and over and over again. We don't
know how much of a chance they have. Who is trading away talent in May? If they have a chance to go out and get an impact player now, then yeah, I'm all for it. But I would be very, very surprised if anyone is willing to give up on their season. And what does that tell their fans? Just as fans are being allowed back into stadiums, that, okay, well, you waited all this time, and sorry, we're not really going to put a great product on the field for you this year, but come out and see us anyway. I assume you guys saw where the Blue Jays, per baseball prospectus, I believe it is, have 8 of the top 100 player prospects, in baseball right now, and that's more than any other organization. Well, you look at the talent that they've already got on the field, and then you add 8 pretty good prospects. Now, a couple of them are in both categories. Alejandro Kirk and Nate Pearson, they've spent some time on the major league roster, but it's a numeric fact that they don't have room for all of them and all of the guys that they've got now. So I think when you look at all of that, I think the makings of some impact deals are there. And if Major League Baseball and whoever is creating these expectations doesn't realize that, maybe they should have a look and see what's going on. But interesting that the Red Sox are doing so well on the hitting sheet. Excuse me, another visit from another cat. Audience, this is marbles.
Steve's going to lose his marbles.
Yeah, right, yeah, I am. I'm losing my marbles.
Excuse me.
So
I'm just sorry, Steve.
No,
you go ahead.
It's best. But I mean, okay, you have 8 of the top 100 prospects. Therefore, you make him an offer you can't refuse. The Blue Jays are poised to do something really special that no one expected. So you grow a pair of huevos, Ross Atkins, and you to stop worrying about loving your prospects. Okay, they're not kids. They're not your children. They're commodities. You trade the commodity, make your team better now, and then you establish yourself, because nobody else in the American League has, other than maybe the Red Sox, as a contender, and you go and you do it. I don't care if they had 50 of the top 100 prospects. It does not matter, because they're not playing on the field now. You want to be a playoff team and be better than 51%? Trade some of those prospects, get pieces you need right now, and I'll shut up. And what could be a better reward than me shutting up for the rest of the season?
But I think that Karen's point is that it is exactly yours, that the pieces are there. A big deal could very well happen. And as Karen said, if that presents itself tomorrow, great. Realistically, though, I mean, but what you're saying, I assume, is you got to kind of force the market and just overpay.
You don't wait for them to present yourself. Okay, we're all married. When we were single, did we sit back and wait saying, oh, the perfect person's just going to come knocking on my door any day? No, we did not. We went through all the hell and all the pain and all the other, circus act stuff you had to do to find the right person. So do it. Don't just sit on the couch. Okay, go out and do something.
Well, I'm gonna blow your point out of the water, because I met my wife when I was 16 at my mall job, and I fell in love with her and have been in love with her ever since. So it actually literally became very easy to me.
Okay, well, yeah, but still,
my husband, who I've known for years and years and years, we renewed our acquaintance on a chance meeting on a bus. Way back in 2002. We had been out of touch. And that's how we got back in touch. So,
okay. Well, again,
but what I was going to say,
of course, that's why my marriage didn't work. But but still, we've all been in that driver's seat. You don't sit there and hope somebody is going to wave you through, or sit there and say it might not be safe to go through this green light. You just go through the green light. That's why it's green. That's why they have red, yellow.
Well, one point, if you don't mind, before we get too far off track, you were talking about the Red Sox and how well they've hit, and I totally agree with you, as I think that I care much more about actual results than all of these, well, so-and-so's expected this, is that, and I mean, there is no World Series of expected results. That's one of the things that I'd like to say. I mean, good for the Red Sox and what they're doing. The Blue Jays, I think, like, even in terms of this season, that they're really up and coming. I mean, other than Vlad has pretty much been hot the whole season, and Grichuk started hot, and now he's tailed off a bit, and we're not sure if this is his usual pattern or if it's just a short slump, and hopefully he'll break out of it. But a lot of the other regulars really got off to slow starts with a bat, and like one by one, they're all really picking it up. I'd say almost all of them have really improved. So I'll really be interested to see when the season is over what the offensive stats look like, and I think the Jays are going to be one of the better teams in that regard.
Yeah. So because we're running out of time, we're running out of time. So I wanted to talk about quickly kind of unsung heroes, because given that I think the theme of this week's episode is the Blue Jays being underdogs. But for the sake of time, maybe I'll get you each just to kind of, I know it's on the spot, but just give me your unsung hero for this 2021 season so far. And Steve, I'll start with you.
Tyler Chatwood.
Yeah.
I mean, his establishment of his command and that cutter, setting up his other pitchers, he's become a very dangerous leverage reliever. And I think that, as much as anything, has saved the Blue Jays bullpen.
Yeah, yet to give up a run. Looking very sharp in his 14 innings of work. Karen, who is your unsung hero?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I was almost going to say Marcus Simeon, but he's a fairly high profile player. Just when they signed him, I still feel like they sort of signed him as an afterthought. I don't know that he was their number one target in the offseason as far as a way to upgrade the infield. I still think realistically they were probably trying to get a good third baseman. And when that didn't work out, it's like, okay, let's improve something. And I mean, you look at everything he's done, I have to say that he's exceeded expectations, but as I said, he's a little bit more high profile. If you really want to look at someone who's unsung, I love Santiago Espinal, and I wish they would give him more playing time. I mean, he just didn't somebody find a while ago that in spite of only playing 40 innings at third base, he was leading the league in a defensive run saved with a +4. Like, oh my God. He's just such a weapon. He might not necessarily win an award, win an MVP or a batting title or who knows what, but I just think he is one of those players that when he's on the field, he always finds a way to help the team. Things like base running, and I mean, so far this year his hitting has been pretty good, small sample size, but whenever he gets a chance, he usually does something. So I wish they'd give him more of a chance.
Right. So I was toying around with this kind of topic all afternoon, and Steve took mine, Tyler Chatwood. That was going to be mine. So I'm going to kind of stick with the bullpen here and really rattle Steve's cage a little bit. The bullpen completely doing obscene amount of work, almost as many innings as the starters. I know last week I think Steve said that they had surpassed, but it's now kind of evened out a little bit. Regardless, for that fact, I was going to say, well, I'll cheat and say the entire bullpen, but I won't. I'll go even more bold. And Steve, I'm going to say that the unsung hero of the 2021 season is Charlie Montoya. How he's managed to keep his team in a playoff spot, given the number of injuries and the matchups that he's had to play and all of that, and his bullpen management has improved since he first took the job. I am going to have to say right now, my unsung hero is, if it can't be Tyler Chatwood, then I'm going to give a nod to Charlie Montoya. And unfortunately, I'm the host and we're out of time, so Steve doesn't get to respond.
Results will speak for themselves.
One way or another, you're absolutely right. But for now, I'm listen, Charlie Montoya, my hat's off to you, bud. You're doing a bang up job. Anyway. All right, we are at the episode's end, number 259. 259 of these shows in the books. You can catch most of the last probably 8 weeks, 12 weeks. I don't know how long it's been. On our YouTube channel, you'll find this. You'll find Sunny Side of the Dome, Karen's show, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You'll find the On Feck Circle, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget, you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, everywhere. If you just want the audio version, you can go that way. Give us a subscribe and a written review. We're on Twitter at Jays from Couch, Facebook, everywhere. But that's enough about us, the site. I want to talk about individually. Steve, let everybody know how they can follow you and all that fun stuff.
You can follow me on Twitter at US of Jays. There's also a US of Jays Facebook page. We do a little daily video diary of the 2021 season. So that's always a lot of fun. If you think I'm a lunatic here, tune in. But tomorrow night on the On Feck Circle, I have a segment called This Week in Baseball. And my This Week in Baseball is Nate Pearson becoming a full-time reliever.
Yeah, I am speechless. So I'm just going to say, Karen, your turn. Let everybody know how they can follow you.
Yes, I'm on Twitter at Karen Sutar1. That's SOUTAR1. And I'm on Twitter quite a bit, usually chatting about something. So you can find me and we can always engage with each other respectfully about baseball or various other things. So.
Awesome. And I would just for the record like to thank you both for joining me this week. I would love to just set you two up on a show where I don't have to talk at all and just let you two go at it, because that would be solid entertainment. So thank you both. I deeply appreciate you taking the time to join me.
Thank you.
And to everybody at home, thank you for tuning in. However you tune in, we really appreciate it. So for Steve, for Karen, for Charlie Montoya, this is Shaun Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at Doyle JFtC. Hoping life gives you a juicy fastball in the middle and you don't miss it. Take care.